Tonight, anyone 60 and over in Ontario can book their 4th dose of COVID-19 vaccine starting tomorrow. But some doctors say more needs to be done.
Really, if they were smart, they would bring in back things like the mask mandate.
This as the latest wastewater sampling shows COVID cases in the province are beginning to reach the same levels as the height of the last wave. Plus,
this is just an incredibly wasteful way to build new buildings in the city of Toronto.
They have been dubbed wedding cake condos, and affordable housing advocates are calling for them to become a thing of the past if we want to solve the city's housing crisis. And
we used all of the available real estate out in center field, and we covered it with LEDs.
The Rogers Centre is set to welcome back the Blue Jays for their home opener on Friday, and fans will notice more than a few big changes at the ballpark. We'll take you for a sneak peek. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. Ontarians 60 and older will be able to book their 4th dose of COVID-19 vaccine starting tomorrow if it's been at least 5 months since their last shot. The province is also opening up eligibility to all Indigenous residents. Now, this comes as COVID infections and hospitalizations continue to climb, with the latest wastewater sampling showing no signs of relief. Lorena Redicott reports.
Thaisa Shao will be eligible for her 4th dose as of tomorrow.
I'm 76 and I have some lung problems, so for me, it's good news.
She tries to keep a sense of humor about her risk factors if she contracts the virus.
I should get it. I have about 3 seconds maybe.
The province is going beyond the National Advisory Body's advice of offering the second booster to everyone 80 plus. Dr. Isaac Bogosh says it may not be needed yet for everyone 60 and up.
It's really meant for those at greatest risk of hospitalizations. And it'll provide a little bit of benefit. I don't think it's going to provide overwhelming benefit based on what we know, but it will provide some benefit.
This is as the latest wastewater sampling shows COVID cases are up, and in every part of the province. It's an early monitoring system in the absence of widespread testing. The head of the science table says it's looking the same as the peak of the previous wave.
At that time, we had roughly 100 to 120,000 infections per day. That's our estimate.
But this time, more people are vaccinated and more were recently infected.
It's a numbers game again. We won't see at the same level of infections the same number of hospitalizations, luckily. But if we continue to go up and up and up, we could see again the same sort of hospital occupancy.
One emergency room doctor hopes that's not the case.
It's already the wait times are crazy. We're short-staffed. People are getting sick. Every day, they're asking for people to come in early, leave late, and cover for 6 shifts, so it's not great.
He feels the government should have kept the mask mandate. Thaisa Shao wants to hear directly from public health leaders on that.
I get a little confused, and the doctors aren't saying too much, like that Dr. Moore, as to give us guidance.
The chief medical officer hasn't done a briefing or media interview in 4 weeks. Today, the premier defended him.
Dr. Moore is one of the hardest working people I've ever met. He never rests.
The premier says he and his staff do receive frequent briefings. Plus,
yesterday, he had a meeting with all public health officers throughout the province.
The government says those eligible for a 4th dose should wait at least 5 months after their 3rd dose. The online vaccination booking portal opens at 8 a.m. tomorrow. People can also book over the phone through participating pharmacies or their family doctor's offices. Lorena Redicott, CBC News, Toronto.
3 people were injured in a stabbing in Scarborough tonight. Now, it happened at around 6:20 near Markham Road and McNichol Avenue. Police found 2 people suffering from stab wounds at the scene and another victim a short distance away. They were all rushed to hospital with serious injuries. One of the victims suffering life-threatening injuries. Police arrested 1 man at the scene and say there is no threat to the public. In Brampton, 2 people were taken to hospital in custody after a 3-vehicle crash involving a police cruiser this morning. We spoke to a neighbor who saw it happen.
I suddenly heard a tire screeching sound and a loud bang. Turned to the corner, saw the silver Volkswagen, flying through the fence, toppling itself twice and landing the way you see it now.
It happened in the area of Sandalwood Parkway and Richvale Drive North around 9:45 a.m. Police say the Volkswagen collided with a police cruiser and a second car before flipping over and landing in the backyard of a nearby home. 2 men in the Volkswagen were transported to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries and are now in custody. The officer in the police cruiser was not injured. The man in the other vehicle that was struck was taken to hospital but is expected to be okay. Ontario is offering emergency supports to Ukrainians fleeing the Russian invasion. The province announcing today it is prepared to take in tens of thousands of Ukrainians who need a new home, connecting them with jobs once they arrive and providing them with support such as healthcare and counseling. Lisa Shing has more.
These are Olena Denistryanska's memories of her life before the Russian invasion. She was an accountant for 12 years and a realtor. Her last visit to Canada was in January to see her eldest son, who's attending Fanshawe College in London. She never thought she'd be returning this soon, leaving her husband in Kiev to fight. It was very difficult to leave home, says Denistryanska. I knew I was going to a country where I didn't know anybody. I knew there would be a language barrier, there would be difficulties with finding a job. But the Ukrainian community came through. Through an acquaintance, Denistryanska found a place to live with fellow Ukrainian Roman Boychuk. He has a cleaning business and has hired her as a worker.
I feel like there's very little I can do, and this was definitely something that I could do. And I just took the chance as soon as I had it.
Boychuk is hoping the new measures announced by the province will help refugees like the ones he's put up, and about 40,000 others expected to arrive, according to Premier Doug Ford.
We welcome as many people from Ukraine as possible. We got to protect these people.
That means Ukrainian newcomers will receive health coverage and emergency housing. The province is also providing funding for trauma-informed counseling through Canadian Ukrainian community organizations and a $1.9 million scholarship for post-secondary students arriving on an emergency basis. The province has also set up a dedicated email and phone number to connect new arrivals with job search supports and local employers. The support from the government is huge, says Denistryanska. It sounds really good as long as there's a very easy way to make it actionable.
This will tremendously help them to at least get a first step, and I expect a lot of people now will apply to Canada because they have a realistic chance to start a new life or at least stay temporarily, because a lot of people want to go back.
For Denistryanska, the hope is to use this support to keep her family afloat before returning home at some point down the road. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
The Toronto Blue Jays are back on home soil, gearing up for a big game on Friday. Their first home opener since 2019. The Rogers Centre is expected to be packed, and when fans make their way in, they will notice more than a few changes. Greg Ross gets a sneak peek.
The first thing that jumps out at you when you walk into the Rogers Centre is the massive new video screen.
We used all of the available real estate out at center field and we covered it with LEDs.
Almost 750 square meters of LED, which includes the giant center screen with 2 new wings at the bottom.
It gives us the ability to show you larger replays, better high-resolution cameras, and more stats during the at-bats than we could previously.
It's not the only LED that's new. They've replaced the old high-intensity lights at the ballpark with much more efficient LED lights.
It draws about a third of what our consumption-wise, hydro consumption-wise.
Speaking of consumption, fans will also have new options at the concession stand.
Canada's own premium fried chicken. Mary Brown's is here at the ballpark.
And if meat is not your thing, there's something for you too.
We have a new concession this year called Field of Greens. And if you're looking for vegan, vegetarian, or gluten-free options,
that includes vegan hot dogs, vegan hamburgers, and even vegan nachos.
We make a faux vegan cheese sauce that eats just like a nacho cheese, except it's made with sweet potatoes, roasted eggplant, some almond milk, and of course like green chilies and jalapenos.
The experience is also changing for the players, who now have their own completely renovated practice facility. More than 830 square meters of space for players to work out and get extra batting practice. The Jays say it's equipped with state-of-the-art technology.
We have a George Springer bobblehead giveaway.
It's not exactly new, but it's something that didn't happen very often during the pandemic. Giveaway days are back, and they'll happen regularly throughout the season.
They're really excited, obviously, about our bobbleheads, our jerseys that we have, but also just being back in the ballpark and being able to celebrate the team that we have on the field.
Fans will be welcomed back to the ballpark on Friday when the Jays host the Texas Rangers in their season opener. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first look at the forecast. Colette, a pretty gray and cloudy one for the most part today, but temperatures not too shabby.
Yeah, that's right. Those temperatures, they really spiked out ahead of this system. So areas that were able to keep the sunshine a little longer, some very impressive numbers. 17 for Kingston, 15 into Ottawa, St. Catharines at 18. You know, we had the sun early and then that cloud deck pushing in. And of course, where we started to see the rain into the afternoon hours in southwestern Ontario, that's been making its way across the province. We'll continue to see some off and on periods of rain through the overnight. We're talking about less than 15 millimeters in most cases around the GTA, but much more significant into eastern Ontario, and that's where there have been some weather advisories, and into southern Quebec, the rainfall warnings, where we're looking at amounts close to 50 millimeters. I'm going to show you that coming up in the show. I do want to mention we should have sun to start off tomorrow, and then we get into some scattered showers, mostly north of the GTA. You'll likely see a few sprinkles coming through into southwestern Ontario. So temperature mild tonight, 7 and 14 for tomorrow.
Thanks so much, Colette. Several children's hospitals in Ontario are reporting an increase in COVID cases among young people. While the province says everything is under control, some are calling for mask mandates to be brought back in schools. And at least one Toronto doctor is noticing a new potential COVID symptom parents should be on the lookout for. Chris Glover reports.
She was blistered all the way, all around your face.
A rash of pimples around the mouth, hands, and feet commonly associated with hand, foot, and mouth disease could now be a sign of COVID, according to one Toronto pediatrician whose young patients with these symptoms are now increasingly also testing positive for COVID.
I worry that if it's actually a manifestation of COVID and kids are not staying home for the 5 days or longer of the isolation period, perhaps they're going to be spreading it to their peers.
Dr. Dina Kulik worries any misdiagnosis could be problematic as positive COVID cases among children rise in her practice and across the province.
Absolutely. There's been a huge rise in the number of cases of COVID. If we have enough people with COVID, we have enough kids with COVID, and a small percentage of those children will get very sick.
Last week, COVID-19 admissions at an Ottawa Children's Hospital were the highest since January's Omicron wave hit. Right now, you'll even receive this message on its website, warning of wait times at its emergency department. McMaster's Children's Hospital is also seeing increased activity, but with fewer than 5 admitted COVID patients, the facility says it's meeting demand. Okay, good. The province's website says no Ontario school is closed due to a COVID outbreak, but many are dealing with absenteeism of 25% or more. In Ontario classrooms, masks are no longer required. When we asked the Toronto District School Board if there would be any changes to COVID protocols, the board referred us to the provincial government.
In terms of the uptake in cases, both for adults and children, that's something that we anticipated.
Today, the health minister made it clear any change was unlikely.
Knowing that we have the capability in our hospitals to manage this, this is something that we are sure that we're going to be able to get through. There's no cause for panic, that this was anticipated.
If I was, in a position of power, I would not have removed the mask mandate at that time in such a foul kind of swoop.
Dr. Kulik says regardless of whether masks are required in school, the pediatrician recommends them. Even though COVID infections tend to be mild in children, as more kids catch the disease, the number who end up in hospital will likely increase as well. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto is in the thick of a housing crisis, and advocates say the city's urban planning policies have some catching up to do if we want to begin to solve it, with one policy in particular that they say could use a new angle. Clara Pasica has this story.
The wedding cake, the Mayan pyramid. That's how housing advocates describe the style of architecture seen here. It's thanks to a City of Toronto guideline that ensures 5 hours of sunlight for nearby properties and public spaces.
Housing advocates say the over a decade-old guideline is doing more harm than good.
It becomes a question of where do our priorities lie?
Blair Scorgie is one of the policy's creators. He's now one of its biggest opponents.
Where we were primarily concerned with sunlight access, preserving sky views, maintaining privacy, we now have a housing crisis.
If you want to create affordable housing, every floor being the same as the floor before it makes it easier to build, more economical to build.
Mark Richardson is the technical lead at Housing Now TO.
If we care about affordable housing, we care about family-sized units, we care about green building, we care about accessible units for people in wheelchairs, we need to give them the kinds of buildings that will deliver that, and that means size, and that means scale, and that means simple building forms.
Anna Bailau is Toronto's deputy mayor and chair of the Planning and Housing Committee. She says the city is starting to consider softening the policy in some neighborhoods, answering the call of affordable housing advocates.
There's a full generation that now feels they're not able to afford to live here, and I think we're going to hear from them more and more.
Council is considering reducing the angular plane requirement for buildings in half of Toronto's Danforth neighborhood, but it will keep a height limit of 8 stories. For advocates, that can't come soon enough.
If we want to get to 40,000 units of affordable housing by 2030, which is the city's goal. We can't waste opportunities like this.
Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland will deliver the federal budget tomorrow. It will be the first budget since the Liberals won a minority government last September. David Cochran takes a look at what we could expect.
Oral questions, question oral. One day before the budget, MPs gathered in the House to argue about buying a home.
Can the Prime Minister admit that actually he doesn't have a clue as to what to do with this housing crisis?
You will see significant investments in housing, in supports for families.
Those investments, sources say, will be worth about $10 billion to help municipalities speed up home construction, to build affordable housing, and finance co-op housing. The government will also set up a tax-free first home savings account for Canadians under 40 and ban foreign home buyers for 2 years with some exceptions, such as permanent residents and students.
High tax, high spend budget from the NDP Liberal coalition, one that promises to drive up inflation.
The Conservatives warn more big spending will lead to big problems. But the budget will also respond to the big challenges of the moment. Sources tell CBC News the government will invest heavily in buying weapons for Ukraine and put up to $8 billion in new defense spending, an investment that will lean heavily on improving the military's ability to defend North America.
Okay, I think they fit perfectly. They look great.
The finance minister spent budget eve buying new shoes, a Canadian tradition, but a photo op Chrystia Freeland skipped last year because of the pandemic.
It's been especially tough getting through COVID, and I am very, very conscious of that.
But now that the country has largely moved past the worst of COVID, so will the budget, making good on election promises and living up to the terms of the political deal with the NDP by laying the foundation for a national dental plan. There will be billions in new spending, but sources say this budget will be a step back to pre-pandemic spending levels. The massive support programs are gone, the economy is rebounding, enough to cover the new spending and reduce the deficit. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
And you're looking at a live shot of the Toronto skyline. Quite rainy tonight, heavy at times, but tapering into scattered showers overnight before clearing and making way for some sunshine. Currently, it is 8 degrees in the city. Let's go back to Colette now with a more detailed look at your forecast. And Colette, tomorrow will at least be starting out with some sunshine.
Yeah, that's how it's looking. You know, the early morning commuters likely are still going to have wet roadways, and especially eastern parts of the GTA, but then we are going to get into some clearing pretty rapidly. It just doesn't last throughout the day. We have to deal with the rain through the night, periods of it. Then we'll see some sun, and that afternoon shower risk does come in. Now, it's enhanced to the north of the city, north of the 401 or even the 407, where we'll have a better chance of scattered showers, but even one could come through the city. But the temperature, look at this, we're still going to be seeing some mild readings. And then the weekend comes around, and I have to tell you, temperatures they're not really that much below seasonal, a couple of degrees for the daytime highs, but there is a chance because of some colder air aloft that we could have a few flurries flying. Don't worry too much about that. Let's deal with the rain at hand that's moving through into eastern Ontario. This is going to be enhanced, and they're going to see significant amounts there if you're doing any traveling or need to be, because we're still going to be seeing that well into tomorrow afternoon because of the duration of it, but also just intensifying. That's why there'll be significant amounts there, and there have been some watches and some warnings into southern Quebec too. Here's some of that afternoon instability causing scattered showers. You have a chance for that back towards Windsor area. And then we see in terms of the amounts, it's only around 10 to 15. This is additional for areas that have already been seeing the rain. And, you know, it's not that significant till you look at Kingston, where it's over 40, right? And approaching 50 towards the nation's capital and towards Montreal. Tonight, yes, again, we could see some patchy fog, but we get some partial clearing with just a few isolated showers here for southwestern Ontario. And this is what we're looking at. You know, I think for the morning commuters, it was 6:30. The city should be kind of cleared out of the rainfall, so the road's starting to dry, but still east, you'll be dealing with it. Temperatures, because of this system working its way through, pretty mild through those overnight hours. And then tomorrow, certainly mild, up to 14 degrees. Friday, 10. We've got the Jays in town. It's an evening game. Could have an isolated shower. We'll be watching that carefully, Kelda.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Colette. Finally tonight, there are many robots in Japan working in factories and restaurants. Now they may soon be joined by a robot capable of peeling a banana. But don't count on this guy to help you prepare the fruit bowl at your next party. He takes 3 minutes to execute this task and is only successful about 57% of the time. But the introduction of this industrious fella could point to a future where machines complete tasks more complex than moving metal parts or bringing coffee to cafe patrons. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night.